Hajime, welcome back to Comic-Jutsu Denizens. JT McRoberts here with you, producer, writer, illustrator. Today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite time periods from the Marvel House of Ideas, and that is the wonderful horror-rich period of the 1970s. Here you see I've got a facsimile of the classic first issue of the Tomb of Dracula with that wonderful atmospheric artwork by the legendary Neil Adams featured right there on the front. But what we're actually going to look at is going to be a classic magazine collection from Twomorrows. Back when the comic book world was falling apart, they were busy creating some really brilliant behind the scenes books. Here you can see my mix and matched smattering of a collection of Tomb of Dracula issues, which I would like to have a lot more of them. And I actually do have the entirety of the Essentials reprint in black and white. And I have to say, it plays absolutely like gangbusters in black and white. So if you're a storyteller or just a fan of gothic horror in general, I definitely recommend snagging those Tomb of Dracula Essentials if you cannot get the pricier omnibus collection. But without further ado, let's take a look at some of the fantastic horror artwork that is provided in this classic issue. Comic Book Artist number 13 from 2001. Great Gene Colan cover there. I'm not going to break this down page by page. I really just, because of the Halloween season, I just thought we'd share a look at some of the classic artwork that is contained within. Here on this article, Shadows and the Darkness. It all started in Towers and Chambers, i.e. Chamber of Darkness and Tower of Shadows. You see a fantastic cover by Marie Severin with inks by Bill Everett there. That is the cover to the issue that has the classic monster story from Jack Kirby that was subject to editorial interference. And we see a page of Steranko's story At the Stroke of Midnight, which he talks about in much greater detail in his 1998 Vanguard Productions book, Steranko, The Graphic Prince of Darkness, which we do have a copy of. We'll have to flip through that one day. Where he talks a little bit more about some of the rejected artwork. Now this is interesting here. We get a look at basically Marie Severin's process. You know, she sketched out a few different cover roughs here. And then we see the final version for Tower of Shadows number 6. Here we see Gil Kane taking a stab at horror. Horror was not Gil's strong point, I have to say. I mean, definitely with him it was dynamic action, man in motion, action adventure. But the horrific elements, you know, they don't translate quite as well. But this is a nice cover where you've got this giant eyeball peering through with these tentacles. That's suitably disturbing. And here they have a Name That Host game with the various editors that appeared in the Tower of Shadows, Chamber of Darkness guest host spot. Let's see, of course, Stan Lee stands out the most, and that's got to be Roy Thomas. That is probably Jack down there. Maybe it's Russ Heath, based on the artwork. But anyway, there they all are. That looks like Bruce Jones, maybe. Is that Archie Goodwin? Maybe too old for Archie at the time. There's young Roy Boy right there. Speak of the devil. And there's a full shot of the Marvel bullpen. I do highly recommend this this series in general, Comic Book Artists, in terms of just getting the behind the scenes stories, and also they offer a look into the process of the artist from time to time. It just depends on what is covered in the interview. Here you have Gil Kane doing this great fantasy, and there a Neil Adams Man-Thing story. Originally intended for Savage Tales number 2, wound up in Astonishing Tales number 12, of all places. But you get to see Neil Adams take a stab at Swamp Thing territory. Here we have Frank Robbins and Frank Springer on Marvel Premiere, Werewolf by Night. Not an absolute favorite. I mean, I love the gusto with which that they just go for it. Here, these are much more engaging to me. I've always loved this cover. Dead of Night Scarecrow. See if I can bring it up just a little bit closer for you. Man-Wolf, Gollum, Satana. So these are great. There's a look at Brother Voodoo. It's a great time capsule of the period, but, you know, to me, I always enjoy looking back at historical points and saying, okay, well, all these things were successful and popular at the time. Gil Kane doing The Living Mummy there with inks by the incomparable Tom Palmer. Palmer really gave some weight and depth of field to his inking jobs. The Return of Mr. Monster. I lost track of whatever my point was, but the whole point here is to see storytelling. Storytelling in the single image. Nice use of zips there. Here they're talking to Marv Wolfman, who was responsible for the writing aspects of those Dracula stories, as well as many, many others. Here you go, more Neil Adams art, this time on Dracula. Some good looking stuff. There we have Boris Vallejo's Tales of the Zombie #1 cover. Great stuff. Classic Gil Kane. Here is what I was saying. I mean, this is really kind of a gothic setting. And even though this is a nice illustration, you know, everything is well rendered, you know, it's just not atmospheric the way that things need to be in gothic horror, you know. I mean, that's the best way that I can explain it. Here you go. Things just instantly get more atmospheric once Gene Colan takes over. Look at this. Oh, this is Gil Kane, actually. There's Gene Colan on this page. Almost silhouetted against the moon there, and we've got the dramatic appearance of Blade, and here Blade with Dracula, an unfinished Tomb of Dracula #45 cover is what it says. You can really see the big Jack Palance resemblance that he was using for his Dracula at the time. And I mean, and that's cool. I think that's smart. Let's choose a model for our character, especially if you're making comics, you know, month in and month out. You want them to be consistent, but you also want to have a variety of emotions and models that you can draw from to create your book. So you have somebody like Jack Palance who's had a storied career, and there are plenty of reference photos out there for you. Like most recently, or yeah, recently now. I mean, it's been several years, but you know, Mark Millar wanted the main characters for Wanted to be based on Eminem and Halle Berry. So there are different reasons for doing that kind of stuff. Mark Millar also screwed around with the Nick Fury in the MCU, but we won't, in what became the MCU anyway, but we won't get into that right now. Good look at the gothic just tone that's set by Colan's work here. Love this filigree on the interior of this gothic mansion. And of course the dramatic, you know, classic Marvel upshot. Here Bernie Wrightson doing a cover for Tomb of Dracula. Dracula bursting out of the ground. Not a great Wrightson picture, but serviceable enough. Here's some historical Dracula artwork. The 15th century portrait of Ambrose Castle in Austria, right there. Dracula Lives, number 13, cover by the great Russ Heath. Very evocative cover there. Look how striking that is in black and white, too. Makes me thirsty for milk for some reason. Here we see some brilliant storytelling by Gene Colan with great assists, brilliant assists on inks by Tom Palmer. Like that use of zip there. Very moody, very atmospheric. You know, at the outset, if I didn't make it clear, I want to make it clear that this is a very gothic brand of horror that these guys are presenting, you know, which is something very different from, like, say, the work of Junji Ito and his kind of body horror or his cosmic horror, however one wants to classify it. And I have yet to post the final clip here on the Comic-Jutsu channel, but I have the clip of when I was talking to John Carpenter, and he kind of poo-poos the notion that there are such things as subgenres and various genres, however one says that to him it's just all horror. But, you know, when we're striving as creative individuals or even for academic purposes, I mean, we have to kind of break these things down. And by saying, okay, this book is an approach to Gothic horror, you know, at least that gives us some guideposts. It gives us some direction. Or if one says, well, how do I make my stories more atmospheric? How do I use light and shadow for dramatic effect? Then you can say, okay, well, look at the Gothic horror of the 70s Marvel books. Just absolutely atmospheric stuff. Here we see some of Colan's pencils. Look at how tight these are, too. I mean, these look like they would be brilliant to ink over. He must go back and just erase a bit there to create the mist. Now that's where it takes a real deft hand right there. These are so tight, but here he leaves a lot of room for interpretation. Brilliant stuff, though. And I like how, notice how Colan uses the proscenium arch here. Got it in several panel compositions to really help embed those characters in that background of reality. His backgrounds, I mean, he must use photo references or film references or something. I know when I talked to Gene Colan at Heroes Con one year, rest his soul, he talked about playing Universal horror films in the background to get inspiration and to help him set the mood. And again, of course, those Universal films, they were the classic Dracula, Wolfman, Invisible Man, that sort of thing. And they are Gothic horror films where the environment and the setting is very much a part of it. It's very much a character. Here we see an example of Vince Colletta inking Gene Colan, and man, this is a marriage made in hell. This does not work. Colletta makes Colan's Dracula look very fat. He makes him look like he needs to go on a keto diet. Much prefer to see Tom Palmer on the inks here. Look at this stuff. I want this issue. This is that crossover issue, I do believe, where he crossed over with Doctor Strange, of course. I do not have that. I have some Doctor Strange issues where they close out the original Dracula storyline with the Montesi formula. But I don't have those classics with the Colan artwork. And I think those appeared in the middle of Tomb of Dracula. Just great stuff here. His figures have so much weight to them, and the physics is always believable. It's hard to believe Colan was doing Howard the Duck, but man, there you go. I mean, to me, this stuff really is the pinnacle of the 70s. This with Master of Kung Fu, and then on the superhero side, you know, really what was happening with the X-Men later in the decade was just the pinnacle of what was being made by Marvel at the time. Here we see some more brilliant tight pencils by Colan. Yeah, I'd have to cut in closer for you guys to get a good look at that. But again, I highly recommend getting a copy of this particular magazine. on the secondary market. You can easily buy the digital copy. I think they're like $5 from the Twomorrows website. And you can scroll right through it on your iPad. Look at these spreads. Very atmospheric here. An approach almost like Al Williamson's EC approach. Good stuff. Skip through most of the Herb Trimpe one, but we do want to give him credit for being the original artist on Son of Satan. I'm not sure what Herb Trimpe's strengths were, but he was definitely reliant, and he must have always been on time. It's nice pencil work. It's nice and strong there. There's this Godzilla cover. Now here's another gem of this particular issue of Comic Book Artist. The Son of Satan portfolio by Russ Heath. Now look at this stuff. Oh, it's what I was saying earlier about breaking it down into subgenres, quote unquote, by saying this is mostly gothic horror, is just to make sure that people understand what it is that they're getting into. Because if they're looking for, just something that's just gory or shocking in that way, they're not necessarily going to get it from gothic horror, which is moodier. And man, you look at these spotted blacks, really just setting the tone for the atmosphere here. This is really great stuff. Again, this is the Russ Heath Son of Satan portfolio. He did an issue of Son of Satan. I don't know if this is actually from that or if it's alternate artwork to it, or what have you. Man, nice and gruesome there. He does realistic skulls very well. I mean, that does not look like a cartoon skull. It looks like a special effect that is supposed to look real. There's a nice ad for Toth One for the Road, which I do have, of course. There's a few more that get into talking to Groovy Gary Friedrich. And here you have Mike Plug working on Frankenstein. This is later era Plug where he's really refined. Look at this stuff. His pencils are so tight there. Absolutely gorgeous work. A little bit looser early era Mike Plug, which is why I don't want to linger on it too much, because there's so many brilliant pieces in here. I want to give the really good ones a bit more time. I'm pointing it because the pictures just, they say everything. I mean, the compositions, there's so much storytelling just in each image. This monster is this tableau of horror is captured in this moment where he just springs to life, and the doctor's reacting. Oh, you very much see the what looks like the Grand Moff Tarkin version of Frankenstein there. It's great stuff. In case I haven't said that. Again, here we'll give Don Perlin a little bit of love. Perlin's strengths were really with that kind of EC Comics montage, and he could really layer the action in there to where it looks solid, it looks real, it looks believable. You've got these otherworldly elements. But here you can see the storytelling with this kind of the montage, collage approach for the EC Comics. This is from a Charlton comic, The Many Ghosts of Dr. Graves. So, not a flashy, splashy, sexy artist by any means, but when he could introduce the weird elements in there, he could get them in there to put an image forward. I mean, it's not, it creates a mood, and he did have a solid run on the Defenders. I'll definitely give him that. It was not spectacular or super sexy artwork, but it was a fun run, and the figures were solid. The action was believable. Here we have Tigra concept sketches. Now we have Gil Kane Tigra concept sketches. And I thought this was nice, the way that they close this out. This is the Atlas Monster guessing game, where you have all of the Atlas monsters here, and you try to guess which one is which. Bring that a little more into center frame there. That is just about the end. A little more Tigra there. You can see, based on the Gil Kane concept sketch there, it's this exact same pose. And this last piece is about Pablo Marcos, the brilliant Filipino illustrator behind Tales of the Zombie. I mean, look at this. What is he doing? He must have like some white wax crayon, and then he's letting black ink bubble up on it. But it gives his flesh this weathered and decayed look. Just absolutely gorgeous stuff. Here he's doing a cover for Dracula. There he is doing the Werewolf. Morbius down here. Too bad this Morbius picture isn't a little bit bigger. But it's all just atmospheric. Just everything that we've talked about through looking at this entire issue, you know, is encapsulated here with Pablo Marcos at the finale. Child of Darkness. And there you go. That's pretty much it. So thank you for joining me. I hope you're enjoying your Halloween season. Thanks for taking this little look back with me at the classic Marvel horror era of the 1970s. Once again, like, comment, subscribe on these videos. Give me a little feedback, and I can adapt the content of the channel a bit more for you. Hope you continue to enjoy your spooky season.